there is some speculation that, and he himself had said, that it was the reaction to the Waco takeover. And Bill Clinton orchestrated that takeover, and in fact was so ashamed about what he did in Waco that he was not going to appoint Janet Reno to a second four-year term. And she told him in a meeting right before the inauguration day for his new term that if you don't appoint me, I'm going to tell the truth about Waco. And that forced Clinton's hand in reappointing her. So I think
I don't remember you telling this story before.
No, it's never been said before.
Wow.
I think that President Clinton might want to examine his own connection with the Oklahoma City bombing in terms of Waco before he starts accusing people in walkers and wheelchairs who are trying to keep their Medicare of being provocateurs.
So what was the truth about Waco that Reno threatened to use against him?
I have no idea, but I know that he told me, Clinton told me, that I couldn't not appoint Reno because she would have turned on me over Waco. That's the phrase he used.
What do you...
Any statement by you that they committed suicide, since we never got to talk to them, is all a conclusion that you've drawn, and as you just said, speculation on your part.
I'm trying to resolve in my mind why someone would sit in there for 6 hours with gas and not come out with a full opportunity to come out. Well, who was keeping them from doing it? Or are they compelling themselves, or what? I don't know. It has to be speculation.
I think that's the point, is we don't know.
It was so black you couldn't even see the flames. You could just feel the heat, oppressive heat that pushed you down on the ground.
Moment in American history. Law enforcement using heavy military armor to make a civilian arrest. The tanks spray tear gas into the Davidians.
I heard some people screaming, kind of high-pitched screams. It didn't sound anyone was like a scream of fear. It sounded like more of a scream that someone was getting burned.
We were hoping that the women in that compound would grab their children and flee out. That did not occur. Unfortunately, they bunkered down the children the best we can tell, and they allowed those children to go up in flames with them.
David Koresh, Steve Snyder, 52 other adults, 25 children, and 2 trauma-born infants perish in the April 19th fire. The uninjured Davidians were transferred to the custody of the ATF and booked into the county jail.
The reason we didn't wait was the thing I've tried to say several times, I'm not saying it well enough, is that from his actions on the 19th, when he had some of those people killed by gunfire, others died in the fire for not being able to leave, which I think they were concerned over, most of them, over their salvation. That was his hold over them, is that he would dictate when that occurred.
How do you respond to their families?
It's not because of our actions. Those children are dead because David Koresh had them killed. There's no question about that. He had those fires started. He had 51 days to release those children. He chose those children to die.
Is there anything that we've missed that we should go after in the remaining 2 days?
Yes, sir. I think we've missed some of the questions as to, as I mentioned earlier, why items of evidence have disappeared. why the crime scene was destroyed before it could be evaluated. These areas, especially the evidence disappearing.
I mean, you have, in essence, a crime scene that was so seriously flawed through ignorance or through an air of an elite mentality, or in fact, there was a conscious decision made to not collect evidence for any sort of serious examination. Bodies exhibited characteristics of perhaps being shot. Did anyone fire from any other location?
The information that we've always been given was that there was no federal gunfire on the day of April 19th. Well, in reviewing the photographs and the 302s, the statements in them, I would say there are some questions that need to be.
Talking about that if tear gas were utilized, it would deprive the children of oxygen and it perhaps could be fatal. What they were describing is not the type of tear gas that we are using. We're using a non-pyrotechnic type tear gas, which does not deprive them of oxygen, so it is not a lethal type gas.
This is a U.S. military Mark 651 CS projectile recovered in the aftermath of the Mount Carmel fire.
Very, very troubled by the information I received this week suggesting that pyrotechnic devices may have been used in the early morning hours on April the 19th, 1993 at Waco. At this time, all available indications are that the devices were not directed at the main wooden compound, were discharged several hours before the fire started, and were not the cause of the fire.
In the fall of 1998, unprecedented access to the Waco evidence lockers was granted. The pyrotechnic projectiles identified in the crime scene photos were missing from the evidence boxes. However, 2 additional 40mm munitions were found. These devices are identified by the manufacturer's literature as pyrotechnic rounds. They were found in the rubble behind the compound. These munitions were examined, and the preliminary results indicated these devices may have passed through the wood structure.
You know, they're explaining it all. I mean, you guys have had the evidence for 6 years, and then the Texas Rangers and documentary filmmakers come in. I don't know how long this guy's been working on the film, but probably a few months, maybe a year, and they come in and they discover evidence that the FBI should have discovered in 6 years after a massive investigation and massive media coverage.
I'm not embarrassed. I'm very, very upset.
Beck was so ashamed about what he did in Waco that he was not going to appoint Janet Reno to a second 4-year term. And she told him in a meeting right before the inauguration day for his new term that if you don't appoint me, I'm going to tell the truth about Waco.
Not what the FBI had intended.
This is not what they wanted.
Now it is up to David Koresh. If he is indeed who he says he is, he will not let his people sit in there and burn to death.
12:17 p.m.
In the evidence locker, there are 6 pyrotechnic flashbang grenades mislabeled as silencers or gun parts. According to the Texas Department of Public Safety, they were found in the southwest corner of the building, the dining room, and the chapel, all 3 points of origin of the fire.
Now, maybe the government, the FBI, the ATF did some wrong things, but they didn't light the fire. They didn't start the fire. That is not one of these questions. That is very debatable.
At 12:10 p.m., the FLIR videotape shows at least 2 automatic weapons being fired into the back of the burning dining room, the only undamaged exit from the building.
And what we have is we have men firing automatic weapons, and they're firing into the burning building. And like some sort of a cowboy movie, they're retreating down the building and firing as they're retreating. I cannot remember something more sickening that I had to do to witness this.
According to the Justice Department report, at least 15 people were found shot to death at this location. The FBI conducted ballistic tests, which the Justice Department later termed inconclusive and rudimentary at best.
Bodies were preserved in a frozen or near frozen state inside 2 trailers
for the purpose of examination. For some reason, those trailers who were under the control of the FBI were allowed to not have any electricity running to them, and the bodies deteriorated beyond which any sort of forensic evidence could be gathered. And we were very, very troubled by that.
The crime scene was declared a biohazard, and since the FBI predetermined that this was a mass suicide, the crime scene investigators were instructed to sift, wash, and bleach the evidence associated with the bodies, destroying much of its evidentiary value.
Grinding up all the crime scene. And I'm saying to myself, well, what in the hell are they doing that for? Except for, is they conveniently trying to cover up something that they don't want the public to know.
Based upon the fact that the majority of the women and children protected themselves by dousing themselves with water and blankets, trying to keep the smoke to a minimum, trying to prolong themselves, their life, in a nearly fireproof container, clearly demonstrates that they weren't embracing the flame, that they were trying to flee the flame.
According to their autopsy reports, some of the children were still alive during the fire, but based upon the condition of their bodies, there was evidence of a deadly explosion. The fireball was created by a ruptured propane tank on the ground adjacent to the bunker. But a large hole in the roof of the bunker has never had an official acknowledgement or explanation.
What it tells me is that you had a demolition charge went off on the roof.
General Ben Parton, a former military explosive expert, testified that there were 2 explosions. This footage shows the detonation of a high explosive device on the bunker, which appears to ignite gas from a ruptured propane tank.
I'm not arguing whether Clinton should have gone into the compound or whatever. History, you decide that for yourself.
The FBI named the sniper positions Sierra 1, Sierra 2, Sierra 3. On April 19th, FBI Special Agent Charles Riley stated in his after-action report that he had heard shots fired that morning from sniper position number 1, the undercover house. The position was occupied by the Blue Sniper team, led by Special Agent Lon Horiuchi. Horiuchi stated that neither he nor his snipers fired their weapons on April 19th.
The fact that Agent Horiuchi states in his 302 that the snipers at Sierra 1, which was the undercover house, did not fire, and there is a shell casing, expended shell casing there visible on the floor, would also raise a question.
4 expended shell casings are later found at Sierra 1, the location of Agent Horiuchi's Blue Sniper team.
What makes this particularly interesting is Mr. Horiuchi, coincidentally, happens to be the FBI agent who shot and killed Vicki Weaver at Ruby Ridge and has been charged with manslaughter by the state of Idaho.
In August 1992, white separatists Randy and Vicki Weaver were involved in a standoff with the FBI at their mountain home. Agent Horiuchi shot and killed Vicki Weaver, who was standing in the window of the door holding her 10-month-old daughter.
She was standing there holding the baby in her arms, holding the door so we could get in after they'd wounded me. And this guy is still running free.
According to an internal federal government investigation, Horiuchi's shot is termed unconstitutional. Lon Horiuchi was never tried. 7 months later, he was the leader of the Blue Sniper team at Waco, accompanied by most of the FBI team from Ruby Ridge. According to the FBI's on-site activity log, at 9:03 a.m., FBI command advised Sierra 2 that an unknown subject could be seen traveling on foot at the back of the building. In this aerial photo, taken at approximately 9 a.m., a Davidian appears to be leaving the building and walking toward the back of the compound. The log indicates that Falcon 2, an FBI helicopter, took off to intercept the subject. As it approaches Mount Carmel, several flashes can be seen coming from the side of the helicopter. Dr. Edward Allard, a former supervising scientist in video and television imagery at the U.S. government's Night Vision Directorate, examined the helicopter footage and concludes that the flashes are gunfire.
When we analyze these flashes, as we have done, in 1/60th of a second time frames, it appears that there's 3 shots coming from the helicopter, but in fact, each one of those 3 shots can be broken down into 1/60th time frames, 60th of a second, and we find, for instance, in the first flash, there's 5 separate shots being fired. And it's indicative of a machine gun that's firing at about 600 rounds per minute.
In this view of one of the FBI's helicopters, a pedestal-mounted machine gun can be clearly seen in the doorway.
FBI agents did not return any fire throughout the entire day, in spite of being fired upon numerous times by occupants of the compound.
On the other hand, since this is on a helicopter and people might say that it's reflections from the windshield, it's impossible for these shots that you're seeing with your own eyes to be solar reflections, because if it were so, the helicopter would have to be violently moving back and forth like a mirror in your hands, and this is impossible. So it's in our opinion, it's clearly machine gun fire from the helicopter.
In coming out, the conversation, as I remember it, was, well, if we come out, will we be shot?
It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
Never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.